p.m., February the 4th, 2020. Good evening and welcome to our monthly Sycamore Township meeting. Tonight's meeting is being videotaped and will be available on our township webpage. And then going forward, all of our trustee monthly meetings and workshop meetings will be available on our webpage and on YouTube. And we're working on live streaming and expect to have this available in the near future. First up tonight is Mr. Weidman with our invocation. If you would please stand, those who can.
This is from former pastor at St. Vincent Ferrer, Father Terry Hamilton. Loving God, as we begin our meeting, we do so with the awareness that without your divine presence here at the center of our meeting, our work will be empty. Grace us with your wisdom and vision, that we might be open to your guidance and inspiration. May all of our decisions be for the good of the township and the citizens we serve. Amen.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call on Fiscal Officer, Mr. Porter, for the roll call.
Mr. LaBarbera,
Here.
Mr. Weidman,
Present.
Mr. James.
Here.
And the approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes from January 2nd, special meeting.
Second.
And our regular meeting in January 14, our 2020 workshop.
Well, let's do them separately.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Motion to
go
approve January 2nd, 2020 special meeting.
Second.
ahead. Any comments, discussion? Okay. Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. Weidman.
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Make a motion to approve January 2nd regular meeting.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. Weidman,
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to approve January 14th workshop meeting.
Second.
Mr. Porter, discussion?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. Weidman,
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Porter, you have the bills and receipts?
Yes, we have receipts of $581,489.09, disbursements of $22,884.72. A complete listing of all receipts and disbursements is available in the office for you
Motion to
review.
approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. Weidman,
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Okay, next we have the public comments. Mr. Warrick.
First is Bob Vilson. I can't read it. Oh, okay. Kathy?
For public comments, what we're going to do, we have guidelines that we're using that was set up by last year's board. We're using the time limit of 4 minutes. This isn't a dialogue. We're not going to answer any questions, although in the 4-minute period, you can ask one question after another. You can sing, you can do whatever you want to do for 4 minutes. And we may answer some of the questions you have after you're finished.
I used to dance.
And we may start answering those questions during our trustees' comment section at the end of the evening. Or if you have a question and you want us to answer it, leave contact information and somebody will get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Sometimes, okay. Can you hear me?
Can everyone back there hear her?
Okay.
No, they can't, actually.
I wanted to ask the township to contact the various high schools and ask for artwork to be displayed in our lobby. And I'd be happy to take the lead on that, to contact, there, it sounds like I'm on now. Okay. But, so I'm asking if we could display high school artwork in our lobby here, and as I was saying, I'd be glad to be the person to contact, or if the township wants to do that. But I like to promote the arts of young people. We have many talented artists in our high schools, and this would be a great opportunity to display their work. And of course, our taxes are supporting their training. So if you want to answer that later, you can. I wanted to ask our police officers this is a different question, and I did call Tori, and he's not here tonight, and I asked him to alert you to this. What kind of training do you all receive regarding domestic violence? Because we had a murder-suicide, the worst kind of domestic violence that there can be. And what kind of training do you have, especially in reaching out to the victim of domestic violence?
We have yearly training and online training.
About what? What's it teach you to do? Or maybe that's too long a discussion. Can people look at that, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. I can get back with you and
okay.
discuss it with you.
And is that as a group or online? That's just you look at it and,
That's one-on-one online, but then that's a group and service training, which is yearly.
okay. Well, I think that's important to have because we have reports of domestic violence, and of course you had the most serious one here occur just not too long
Excuse me,
ago.
Kathy, we don't want a dialogue going on. Just-
Okay, sorry about
okay.
that. Okay. I would like for the Sycamore Township to support the Cooper Creek Collaborative, especially in the purchasing of additional trees. The trees that are going to be planted by the Groundwork Ohio Valley, which is a local youth workforce development organization focused on helping young people get experience in green jobs. Each of the trees will be 4 to 6 feet tall and a 1 to 2 inch diameter. They're going to be good trees. There'll be a wide variety of trees, and if they fail, there will be a replacement policy. So I'm hoping that Sycamore Township, and these will be mostly in the Cooper Creek Collaborative area, which would be over by Bechtold Park in that area. And of course, we know how severe the emerald ash borer has devastated the elm trees in our urban canopies. This is a way to replace that and to mitigate the harm that's been done by overdevelopment. On the last note, I hope that we will support community gardens. There are people that want to have them, and I think a good place for them to be would be in our parks somewhere. You have water, you have parking, you have toilet facilities, you have electricity, and so I'm hoping that we will reach out to the people that are interested in doing that and support them in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky Gaines?
Hello, my name is Becky Ganis. I live at 4687 Largo Drive. Last time I was here, I talked about the need for a sidewalk by the hospital, and I brought an illustration, but I'm not going to spend my time passing that out because there isn't much time. What I want to talk about is Happiness Way. My understanding is that road would be closed, but apparently now the fence has been moved across the street, and it has been our public road has been effectively annexed onto the private site. The gate has been moved to Kenwood Road, and my understanding is that we were trying to avoid having the gate at Kenwood Road, because if we did, then they could put it on their own site. They didn't need our road. Now, Bank of America is building on the busy corner of Montgomery Road and Kenwood. There are curb cuts right by the intersection, but we're not doing anything special for them. They're gonna run those construction vehicles in and out of there without any problem at all, and nobody's doing anything about that. The theater was built. All the projects on Montgomery, or on Kenwood and on Galbraith have been built without anybody having to close roads, except for Happiness. Now, downtown, I park every day in a 6-story parking garage. Hundreds of cars go in that and out of that garage all day long. Hundreds of cars go up and down Sycamore Street all day long. And right across the street, there is a construction entrance. And they have not closed the road. We all coexist, the cars, the construction vehicles, every single day. There's a little bit of dirt because that's the nature of construction. It's not a big deal. We drive through it. But for some reason, CIG has convinced you all that it needs Happiness Way. Why is it different for them? Why do they need our road? The road that I have traveled on for 20 years, the road some of my neighbors have traveled on for even more years. Why can't we coexist on that road? There's a lot fewer of us than the hundreds of cars that are traveling on Sycamore Street every single day. We're grown-ups. We know when it's too congested for the construction vehicles. We can make adjustments. When they need to help their vehicles come into the construction site, a van comes out with a flag, slows the traffic down, they bring them in, and then the traffic resumes. Why can't we do that on Happiness Way? I would like that road to come back. I think I can share that road with a few construction trucks. It's not the end of the world. Now, CIG told you that we wanted that road closed. Well, no one said it at the meetings. I want that road closed. Nobody said, I want to be inconvenienced and have less access to my home. In fact, what they said was the complete opposite. They said, we don't want that road closed. We want access to that. Now, I expect to hear that it's too late, that they've already started. All they've started doing is some demolition. They haven't even started doing site work. There's no reason that fence can't go back on their property. There's no reason that road can't be opened. There's no reason we can't coexist and both use the road, just like I do every single day with hundreds of other cars on Sycamore, downtown. The Kroger building was just built downtown. It's surrounded by 3 roads. It's 100% footprint on that property. From the minute they put the caissons in, to the topping out, to the tenant space, they never closed a road to put that in. We don't need to either. And it's not too late to change it, and I'm asking you to change it. We use that road. I've used it for 20 years. I'd like to continue to use it.
Becky,
That's all I have to say.
thank you.
If I still have time, I'll pass out what I talked about with Beth.
Okay,
Can I bring this up to
sure,
you?
sure.
May I ask a few questions, since I'm new here, and Mr. Kellums might be able to answer this, or the other trustees? Was closing Happiness something envisioned at the start of construction on the site, or something envisioned to happen as the project was completed as one of the conditions of rezoning?
From my understanding, it was at the start of demolition. It was in the resolution to close the road, mainly to keep the construction traffic from going through the neighborhood.
And this is embodied in the resolution approving the zoning parameters for the project then?
Yes.
Okay. And was the plan also to close off the entirety of Happiness during the construction? Because from what I understand from what I've seen at the area and seen in photos, they've actually crossed Happiness over to the sidewalk on the Jewish hospital side and then closed it all the way down and have the fence out at the entrance to Happiness at Kenwood Road. That is still our road that they are using. I don't know if they're staging materials on it or not, but I thought there were entrance
right
points
now
into,
it's just-
let me finish, sorry. I thought there were entrance points into Jewish Hospital from there as well. So are we, or are they unnecessarily constricting some of that? Should they move this back at least to the entrance to what they've closed off in there?
There are 2 entrances to Jewish, their parking lot there. They do have access from the front. We talked with Chief, and we also talked, or we didn't, the contractor talked with Jewish Hospital about the closure before it ever happened. So the resolution is kind of open-ended. The resolution just says the road should be closed. It doesn't say when it should be opened, so that would be up to you, gentlemen.
And was that closure based upon any traffic studies done at the time, or was it based on the understanding the residents wanted that? Was there some reason for doing it? I'm curious.
Ask the trustees that.
I think that it was closed because the residents had expressed significant concern about. Let me finish this, please. The residents had suggested that there would be construction traffic coming through Frolic and into the back side, and also parking, of which we're trying to make sure there's no parking on Frolic as well. So that was the discussion during the CIC hearings, and it was touched on multiple occasions, and I believe that's why that was put into the resolution to close that off. Now, I think, as Tracy has suggested, I think our thought was, let them get through the construction, so we don't have construction traffic coming through the neighborhood. And once they get through the construction, if the residents want to open it, I think we're all okay with that. I think just the biggest issue was having construction vehicles coming down Frolic and having construction workers parking on Frolic. We didn't want either of that to disrupt the neighborhood. So that was the reason for that.
Yeah, and I also remember that. Tracy, one of the things, a number of neighbors have called and asked about the demolition starting like at 7 o'clock in the morning. We never put a time period on that, did we?
We did not.
But we
did
have a
not.
noise
We have a
resolution.
noise
yeah, so-
ordinance that starts at 7 a.m.
It starts at 7, okay. Ray?
Next is it Jill and Ryan James, or?
Well, they just signed in.
Were you just signing in?
Oh, okay.
Let me ask before we move on, though, Mr. Warrick, that would you make a note to make opening Happiness Way a point of discussion in a future workshop? I think we should talk about that more. I expect that a lot of the neighbors who may have been concerned about that at time had that wrapped up together with their unhappiness with the project overall, and maybe we should separate the two issues and at least consider it and get some public input and talk about whether that makes sense going forward. And maybe it does make sense to keep it closed for now, but I think we should talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Standish?
Standish Fortin, 12137 Macaulay Road up north. Thank you all for your service. Tracy, thank you for getting me those reports. I look forward to the follow-ups on that. I'll try and be quick. The land use plan. To make sure the township does not lose sight of the opportunity it has to bring itself into the 20th century with land use planning, so that it does actually have what's considered a master plan. I hope that doesn't fall on deaf ears. With the bills and read receipts, Mr. Porter, is it possible that we could also get an update on our assets? I remember the previous administrator gave us some dire predictions as to the financial well-being of our township. I think it would be good for us to track how much money, in fact, the township does have. That's just a humble suggestion. I don't think it'd be too difficult to get that data. And then I'm going to throw a task out that hopefully those in charge can accomplish. But if any of you have ever gone anywhere and tried to list Sycamore Township as a mailing address, it doesn't exist. We do not exist, according to the U.S. Postal Service. That's an insult. So I'm tasking the township, so I don't hopefully have to do it. We've got video cameras, by the way, thank you. But this is something simple. I'd like to be able to list that I live in Sycamore Township and have something mailed there. But right now, I can't do that. Nobody in the township can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Kuznetsky?
Kat, by the way, being a retiree from the post office, you could
Well,
probably
I was going to
answer
respond to
question quickly.
that. All right, Cincinnati, all of Cincinnati is 452. I live in 45236. I can write Kenwood, I can write Memphis. As long as the zip code is 45236, that's where it's gonna go. This happens to be in, well, Sycamore Township has several different zip codes. Actually, I think 3 off the top of my head, I don't remember. But, so you can write Sycamore Township, and sometimes when I even get on Facebook, it'll say I live in Sycamore. But, you can write Sycamore Township, and it will go to wherever the zip code is that you put on there.
I understand, but you can't list Sycamore Township in the database, so for a road or something.
Okay.
And they said it's because of how the U.S. Postal Service classifies it.
I'm gonna find out for you. I'm gonna look into that. So anyway, thank you, Now, pardon me if I'm gonna cover a couple things. I've been rushing in and out of town, going home to Michigan. My father's not doing well. So this couple things, these things may have already been covered. I'm gonna talk real fast. First of all, I'd like to thank Tom responded to me, and Mr. Kellums responded to me, and the Sycamore Sheriff's Department for putting the speed thing on Styrex, it has made a little difference. I appreciate it. Through the holidays, it was a madhouse. Judy, didn't you almost get taken out by a guy turning left when you were turning left and went around you left? It's been a madhouse. So, yeah, and I believe that's made a difference, and I appreciate it, the quick response. And so thank you for that. I don't just complain, I think also. So that was much appreciated. Kathy, I have an art background. I'd love to help you with getting art if you want some help. Also, last year at the end of the season, I bought about 4 million things of little seeds at the dollar store. I bought their whole big thing of seeds. So I would love to donate some seeds if you're going to do the planting thing. A ton of them. All right. Also, I came because of Happiness Way. I sat through every single meeting too. It was brought up. I had heard at one point Greg Pissarro say the neighborhood didn't want Happiness open. I never heard that from township people. From our neighborhood people, I keep hearing that it was brought up. It could have been brought up in the meetings that happened before we were all involved in it, the rest of the neighborhood. But yes, my main concern is I want Happiness Way open. I would like us to thank you for saying we can bring that up a little bit more. Maybe if they need it do they only work Monday through Friday? I've been out of town, so I haven't been paying attention. Or are they working on the weekends over there? On the weekends too? Okay, so we can't have it on the weekends. So I appreciate that, because that I do believe has to be addressed. Then I just have 2 quick questions. I think that's everything I have here. What are they building back here?
Maintenance storage facility.
Okay, and are there plans being talked about what's happening over on our end of the neighborhood over there by the old Pep Boys? Any word on what's going on over there?
I don't think we've
Not even thought about it yet?
we're still working on it.
Okay, when will we know anything about that, Tom?
I don't know, I think we have a traffic study we're gonna address later on in the meeting here, which will actually include that property. So,
Okay,
We have that. There have been some discussions with others about potential things that could go in there, though. So there's activity going on trying to figure out what to go there, but there's no plan yet.
Right, and I'm not objecting to a plan over there. You own the property, that's great. My concern is, we've heard all the rumors, and that's why I'm trying to get on top of this, ahead of the curve about taking streets out of our neighborhood. I mean, I'm sure you've heard all the rumors we've heard, so I just would like
Kat,
to.
don't worry about that.
I'm not freaked. Do I
No,
look
I'm
like
serious,
freaking?
I'm serious.
I'm very calm about it. I just wanted to know, since I have been out of touch, what is going on and if we'll be involved.
It's a different day.
Okay, I'm cool with that. Thank you very much.
That's all the names I have unless I missed somebody, 'cause I picked it up right at 7.
Anybody else? Okay, move on to the Sheriff Patrol report, and tonight, pinch hitting, we got Corporal Kidd.
Yes, sir. Nothing to report.
Nothing, all right. We'll move on to the EMS and Fire report with, are
Please.
you all set? Rob and Mr. Penny.
Actually, I have a few questions of the sheriff's office, if you do have some information, if I may first. Is there any update that you could share as to the Hampton Inn investigation? We keep hearing arrests are imminent. Have any happened yet, or is that still
I'm
imminent?
not sure.
Okay. And I know a lot of people were concerned about the Kemper Road incident that the chief was also deeply involved in. Maybe one of you could address that and just provide any information you could to the public here.
Well, there was a lot of scattered information, and I don't want to say anything that's going to take away from a police investigation. I do know that there was a girlfriend and male that was at the residence, and the male threatened to shoot his girlfriend, and then he threatened to shoot any police that arrived on the scene, and when the police arrived on the scene, there was gunshots. So the police, as they would normally do, they backed out, took precautions, and called in SWAT team, and I think they called the bomb unit in for the robot, and they brought the robot in to search the house, and they found 2 deceased people in the house, so everything played out pretty much how the assailant described how he was gonna do things. So, other than that, I don't know what went on as far as any further investigations after that.
Okay.
It was one of those days.
Chief, what do you have?
Okay, I have, a renewal for a fire inspector's contract. The law director will have that for you. Doug Rath, our fire inspector, he's a private contractor that contracts with the township for his services. For those that you don't know, he was a formal, employee of the township for 30-something years, as assistant chief and as a fire inspector. And then when he retired, he came back and did contract work for the fire inspector. The nice thing about maintaining Doug is that he knows the township like the back of his hand. I mean, the guy knows every building, he knows every person that owns the buildings, and it makes our day-to-day activity so much smoother when he knows who to talk to, who's been the problem people, who's not been the problem people, and so on and so forth. So it's very, it's a luxury to have him in the position he's in. The contract that when he came into the fire department with me, his contract was written as being under the zoning department under Harry Holder. So we had to update that, so we changed the contract over to under the fire department, under the fire chief, and then kept everything else pretty much the same. The only thing I did request that I put in the contract was a little bit of a raise for him, $2.50 an hour raise. The original contract was in 2006, and he's not had a raise since then. So I was requesting to get that raise on top of it, but everything else is pretty much, the language is pretty much the way the old contract was. The only other thing I have is, last Saturday I had to make a executive decision to go buy a refrigerator that went out in the station. It went totally black. So they had no refrigerator. We weren't at a point of having a meeting to get one, so I told them to go get one.
Here or
Up north, or down here.
down here?
Down here. Yeah, it was 8 years old. It totally, just quit getting cold. And, so we went and got it at Reckenberger. It was $2,699. So it was a little bit over 2,500 marks. So I wanted to let you guys know that expense took place. And that's all I got.
Chief, I want to ask you, there's a front page story in the Enquirer on Sunday, front page story, Cincinnati Fire Department, and the big thing was, can you trust your nearby fire hydrant? There was a story about Lower Price Hill. How are we in Sycamore Township? Can we trust our fire hydrants?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we go out every year and flush them, open them, make sure they open and close, and then, that results in the fall time, have to go out and pump them all. So the only thing we limited doing is flow testing, to where we get the flows on them, because we get good readings from Cincinnati Waterworks on what the gallons per minute flow is, and by doing that, sometimes it creates more havoc than it's worth. We end up with busted water mains, and we end up with people with rusty water in their showers and their dishwashers and their washing machines and so on. So for us to go out and actually do a flow test, we would have to put signage up at the house or on the street of the houses we're gonna do, and give them good enough notice that if we're gonna be flow testing during this time period, don't run no water in your house, and if you do run it out of just a tap, where you're not dumping rusty water into your clothes and a washing machine and that sort of thing. So it's a little more to it, but because we get good numbers from Cincinnati Waterworks on our flows, it's not that critical that we do it. And these numbers come from ISO. ISO goes to the Waterworks, they get the numbers from them, because they need that to make it part of our ISO grade. So they get the numbers from them, and then they share them with us. So we know what our flows are. The whole township is anywhere from, the worst flow is around 900 gallons a minute, and it'll go up to 2,200, 2,300. So we've got very good water in the township.
Anything else for the chief?
Do you want to do the resolution?
Question first. You guys have been doing some training work in the Hauser building that's about to come down too, haven't you?
Yeah.
Is that still going on?
No,
or is that
we're
complete?
done. We're done with that. actually, we've stopped on the houses down here, but we were offered the building, where Tri-Health is, that they're taking down. They worked out, they trained in it last week. I think we're getting really close to the tear down on that, so I don't know if they're in it now or not, if we get any more time left in it or not. So we've gotten excellent training opportunity between those apartments down there and this house down here. We very, very seldom get training materials like that or buildings that we can go in and tear up and just act like firemen, you know? So it was pretty nice to do that. And with so many new guys that we've got, they just enjoyed it. I mean, they learned so much. I mean, you can read a book on how to swing an axe and hit a solid piece of wood and it bounces back in your face, but until you do it, you learn a lot from it. So the opportunity was great that we were able to do so much training in those buildings.
Very good.
Thanks,
Sorry to
Chief.
interrupt.
Yeah, do you want to do
Mr.
the
Desai?
resolution?
Sure.
This is for the contract for the fire inspector.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Chief Penny said. So Doug Morath has a LLC, a limited liability company. So you'll see in the title of the resolution up there on the PowerPoint that the contracts with Safety Compliance Inspections LLC, Doug Morath, who Chief Penny was talking about, is effectively the president of the company. The legal term is managing member, but he's basically the president of the company. The last contract was 2016 was the contract, and that was at $27 an hour. And as Chief Penny mentioned, it's being raised $2.50 an hour to $29.50 an hour. And you know, the township has different people, different agencies doing different things that all have to do with construction, development. We use the Hamilton County Building Department to issue permits, building permits if you want to build something new. Our zoning department takes care of making sure what you want to build is within zoning, so that you're not building an office in a residential area, for example. And then part of all that, you have to review these plans that people submit. And one of the things you review for is compliance with the Ohio Fire Code, to make sure smoke detectors are where they need to be, safety lights are where they need to be. And that's what Safety Compliance Inspections LLC is going to be doing for the township in part. And then Chief Penny also doing the annual fire inspections that are required as well, correct?
Right.
So that's the contract's attached to the resolution, and it's available online if anybody wants to take a look at it. It's not very long, but the resolution just calls out that we're going to be entering into a contract with Safety Compliance Inspections, or SCI, for the services that I just mentioned. That blank line you see up the top of the contract will of course be filled in once the resolution, if the resolution is passed, and then Mr. Morath's company will be engaged to do their work. So, Mr. Chairman, I have for the board's consideration a resolution authorizing a contract with Safety Compliance Inspections LLC for the provision of life safety and fire inspections, as well as fire building plan review, and dispensing with the second reading, sir.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Just a few questions, if I may. Do we bill out Doug's time for some of this, for some of the services we do provide, and recover
We
some of
don't-
that, or is this an?
Not billed out that way, but Doug has made more in plan review fees than what we paid him last
Okay.
year, a lot. So the revenue that we get in from him is mainly through plan review fees and permits that he issues. Anytime a new or an existing construction, they have to do welding permits, fire hydrant usage, anything like that, they have to come and get a permit for it, and we'll charge them. The plan reviews that he does, when he gets those plans in that big around, that packs a lot of money. You know, and every one of everything that gets done in the township has to have a plan to it. And then the other thing is, by state law, we have to inspect yearly hospitals, nursing homes, child care centers, foster homes, and I think that was, and hotels. Those have to be done accompanied by a state fire inspector that comes down from the state. So he definitely is involved in that too.
Okay,
The part of the contract that is in there on after hours, Doug does a lot of after hours inspections, off hours, and most of them are very early in the morning. If he has to do a fire inspection or do something where they're testing the system on a building that opens up at 8 o'clock and is a thriving building, they'll usually request to get that done at like 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's all done and finished, so when they open up, it doesn't disrupt the normal business hours. So he'll come in and do that. He charges for the extra, and we pay him a little bit more to do that, but it all works out, we still make money on it.
Thanks, Chief.
Very good.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Okay, roads, maintenance, and
we got-
recreation report?
Mr. Chair, can we just have a motion on the then and now PO for the refrigerator?
Motion to approve
Second.
for $2,699.
Yeah, second.
And we have one more purchase order for fire department, and it's for $50,000. This is this should have probably been done with the original budget. It's another section of the fire spending, and we're just setting it up now to allow him to operate under the budget.
So that's for 50,000?
50,000, yes.
Okay, motion to approve fire utilities blanket purchase order for $50,000.
Wait, do we need to address these separately, though? We've got the motion on the table for the first one, or
I'm
do we
sorry,
need to
I'm
combine them
sorry,
together?
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
And I will now make a motion for a blanket purchase order for $50,000 for fire utilities.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna move on to roads, maintenance, and recreation report. Mr. Kellums.
Okay, the first thing I have is that I've given you all a list, basically an inventory of our trucks that are used by the maintenance department. Attached to that is a capital program of what we would like to do in the next few years. The International at the top is the oldest truck. That is still in our fleet as an extra truck, even though we buy one to replace it. Now that our parks has expanded and that we're doing all the mowing in-house along with the treatment of all our public spaces as far as weeds, also fertilizer, we need more vehicles, obviously, so that's what that's being used for. Whereas this year in 2020, I'd like to replace 2-1, which is 15 years old, needs a lot of work, as you can see on here, at 88,000 plus miles. The miles aren't extremely a lot, but with those miles comes a lot of idle also, and rust, because of, a lot of the salt that they're in all the time, so there's a lot of rust on those frames. So we're looking to replace that this year, along with the pickup truck, which is excuse me, a 2001 that has 132,000 miles on it. Right now, we're using that to pull our second unit that cuts grass on our public spaces, right-of-ways and all that. It's got plenty of power, but it's just not heavy enough. We worry a little bit about the stopping power on that. It needs a lot of work. It's got some oil leaks on it. And so we're looking to replace that, and that be moved to our mechanic to be used as a service truck right now, because he doesn't have one, so if he has to go out in the field, he's always scrambling for a truck. We're trying to find a Blazer or something that he can drive. So if you look down at the capital program, we're looking to make that into a service truck. And then later in 2022, with our small dump, we would like to just keep that dump and take the bed off of it, put a service body on it, so he could use that. It's a much heavier truck, and then we would get rid of that pickup, which that pickup should be able to last as a service truck from now till then. So if you have any questions about any of these trucks or our capital program, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
So I'm confused. Who's going to be driving the new pickup then, and what's the purpose of that pickup?
That is going to be for the parks. That's pulling a trailer with lawnmowers
Okay, so it's replacing the one currently doing that, and we'll be
Yes,
hauling that,
and
okay.
the one that's currently doing that is going to go to the mechanic for a service truck.
Okay, all right,
It's the
thanks.
F-350. The
That
F-350.
is the 350, yes. And Mr. Desai has a couple of resolutions for those. If you would entertain those.
I'm sorry, I had a few other questions about it first. I've seen some of the backup materials for this, and I just, for my own education, did we solicit pricing from multiple sources for that? I understand there was, on the bill of sale or proposal I saw, it said there was a government discount of some kind, I think, but did we look elsewhere for that as well? How did we go about doing this and choosing the pricing?
We did look elsewhere, and so we chose that price because it's below the state bid. This company has worked real well with us. We went for a state bid first, obviously, which was at Middletown Ford. They called King's. Their government concession was even better than the government pricing. We also called Castrucci. They couldn't touch it. So this was the cheapest price that we found on the F-350.
Are those the sources we typically go to when we bid around, or do we look statewide or in Kentucky or elsewhere? I'm
No, usually
curious.
just in this area. Usually we do state bid, but if we can beat the state bid, then we don't put out for, we don't necessarily advertise if it's lower than state bid.
And
And then the other trucks are on state bid, the Freightliners,
okay.
the Freightliner.
And how urgent is this need currently? I know you've got the capital plan here to follow with that. You said the brakes are not so good on that in hauling mowing equipment.
Yeah, for that 350, it's desperately needed.
So by the time we'll be doing the mowing, we need it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're on borrowed time with that truck now.
Okay, well, one other question of our administrator then, because we're depending on you to be our, the board's eyes and ears on the money and having a fresh look on all of this. Does this expense make sense at this time from your perspective?
I think so, given the maintenance cost and the fact that it has been planned out. I don't see any reason not to follow the plan at this point.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution for the board's consideration authorizing a contract for the purchase of a 2021 Freightliner M2106 truck and dispensing with a second reading.
Motion.
I'll second that.
Discussion, Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have another resolution for the board's consideration authorizing a contract for the purchase of equipment for installation on a 2021 Freightliner M2106 truck and dispensing with the second reading.
Motion.
I'll second that. Question here, though, first, if I may.
Sure.
So this is for equipment to add on to the dump truck, I assume? Wait.
Correct. The
Okay.
first one is just a cab and chassis. The second one is the bed, plow, salt machine, hydraulics, electric needed to run all that.
And are these things replacing existing equipment we've been using on a truck you're retiring, or?
Yes.
what? Okay, and those things are worn out?
Yes.
Okay, and
And
same,
that truck will be auctioned off.
okay, and same question for our administrator then. Do you view this as a valid expense as to what you've seen in our finances and our needs?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have another resolution for the board's consideration authorizing a contract for the purchase of a Ford F-350 pickup truck and dispensing with the second reading.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Tracy, you have something else?
Yes, the traffic study RFQ results for Montgomery and Kenwood roads. I know you had this in your packet, and we're looking at that as, if you remember, you had asked us to put out an RFQ for a traffic study at the Montgomery-Kenwood intersection that would include the property that was in question earlier tonight on Montgomery Road that the township owns in regards to improving the traffic flow at that intersection. So we put that RFQ out. We got 3 submittals with that from TEC, Strand, and Klingers. I also sent those over to the county. Mr. Steve Rudelshofer and myself went through the ratings as far as who we thought put the best submittal in. TEC came in first with us, Strand second, Klingers third. Talked to Hamlin County. Jeff Newby, the traffic engineer from Hamlin County, called me. He said that they thought the TEC would do the best job because they are a quality company and their familiarity with the area. And they thought Klingers would be second and Strand third. So both of the jurisdictions selecting TEC, my suggestion would be that would be who would be hired to do the traffic study.
My opinion on that is we should, no, I would say no to this. That should be addressed and paid for by the developer, whoever that is who purchases that land. I would say we forget about that study for right now.
I think this was a study that we were trying to determine, we heard during the CIG case that the biggest problem we had was that the Kenwood corridor was going to get an increased amount of traffic. And our goal was to try to figure out how we could resolve that issue, and this was to address the request by the residents to resolve that issue. It also encompasses the property that we own, which was purchased for the purposes of access management. And I think that this is a prudent thing for us to be doing right now. We know that the bottleneck is at Montgomery and Kenwood Road. We know that. Engineers have told us that. Our county engineer has told us that. And so I think that should be our focus, that we should try to determine how we can better move traffic through that intersection. So I'm in favor of the proposal.
I have some questions about it here, actually. I've looked through the backup materials we have as to the ratings that Mr. Kellums and Mr. Rudelshofer did, and there are several categories in there. Again, I'm new to this and unfamiliar, so I'm going to ask what may be dumb questions. But for the first 4 rating categories, all 3 applicants were rated identically. It was only the last 2, the past performance and the project approach, where the ratings differed a bit. And I'm wondering what standards do you and Mr. Rudelshofer apply in analyzing those things? Are there particular things you're looking for in the letters of interest that you get? I've looked at the letters of interest too, and I see they express in different ways what they plan to do, but many seem to be about the same. Or do you go by past performance of that particular contractor with the township or with ODOT? Do you reach out to others?
All 3, yeah. So the first 3, one is project managers. They all had very good project managers with a lot of experience that we thought had equal experience and know-how. When you get down to the bottom, we were talking about consultants' past performance and project approach. We do call other people, plus their performance on township projects in the past, along with calling Hamlin County, which is why I called the county to get their input to see what they thought. So we do call around also.
For these in particular, did you call around other than to the county?
We called, I called ODOT, and I called English, and somebody else, I don't remember off the top of my head. It may have been Sharon.
Did you ask about particular projects they had listed as their prior projects? I know each of them listed several things they had worked on.
And just asked them how their performance was on that project.
Do we have experience with all 3 of these who provided the LOIs?
We have experience with all of them, but not necessarily on the traffic study. We have experience with TEC, Klingers, Strand. We just have experience with them on construction. Not construction administration, but design. They are the ones that are doing the roundabout at Conray right now. So that is my experience with them.
Cost-wise, do we have a basis we can compare them on as to what this might cost going forward if the township were to move ahead with engaging them?
We do not.
That wasn't actually a factor in the bidding process, was it?
No, because it's not a bid, it's just a request for qualifications. And then after you get the request for qualifications, then you go back to your top firm for a proposal and negotiate with them on that. And if you can't come to a negotiation settlement, then you would move on to your second. But that is not part of the RFQ.
Okay. We don't have a motion on the table yet as to this either, but we are discussing this since it's come up as part of your report. I see merits in having this done. I also see merits in potentially having someone else pay for it if there is a potential for development there, on the other hand. Tracy, can you give us some idea of what this sort of thing typically does cost? Do we have a baseline from which we can do that from prior traffic studies?
I really don't have a baseline on this because it's different than other traffic studies we've done. You know, we are including, possible development involved in that also. I mean, that would be the only other thing is, what kind of development are we gonna put in there? How much traffic is that going to add? What would be the best for the township? That would be up to you gentlemen.
Well, is knowing the kind of development that would go in there something necessary to doing the study?
It's not necessary, no. It would definitely help. If you're gonna put a strip mall in, or if you're gonna put a, 5-story office building, it would obviously change the traffic, not only the count, but the pattern also.
The LOIs we solicited, I know our proposal for seeking them said we anticipated we'd be deciding this by next week, but the actual start date was projected a few months further out, wasn't it? If we don't decide this now and punt this to a later meeting, is there any harm in doing that?
No harm as far as I see. It's gonna take a while to get the study done. It all depends on, I would think you would want this study done before we looked at any kind of development to know what we can do with that intersection to help improve the traffic.
Is there any guesstimate you could provide as to what something like this might cost, or might, head north of anyway?
If I had to guess, I'm probably north of 20,000, I would imagine.
Let me ask our administrator again. I know you've been involved in some discussions with people who are interested in that site in various ways. Is this something that, from your perspective, you think the trustees should move ahead on right now, or should we consider this a little more?
Well, you could look at it both ways. It's been discussed. Do we need to know what the extent of the bottleneck is now before anything happens on that property? But I also kind of like the idea of not paying for it, and so if we were going to ask the developer to pay for it or share in it, we would have to know what was going in there to add that prong to the study.
Is that something the township can require at the proposal stage of a project? Request a developer who has a proposal for a rezoning or or purchase or sale of the land in this instance to provide a traffic study before the township would consider it?
Well, sure, you can negotiate anything, and I've seen it done both ways.
The only thing I would like to add is that I would think that we would want somebody that was working for us to find out the solution, not somebody that's working for the developer.
Yeah, that is a very good point, yes.
We use TEC an awful lot.
Yeah, they're the best traffic engineer in the city.
I'd be comfortable punting on this to our next meeting, at least if there's no real urgency right now. I'd like to study it a little more myself and maybe talk with you some more about it, Tracy.
Okay.
So,
And I'm in agreement with Mr. James.
you have to specify which Tom up here nowadays, that's right.
Tom.
They don't need a motion since they're not.
No.
Yeah, the only motion would be if you want to move forward with it.
Tracy?
But just to be clear, Mr. James, if I'm understanding it, the workshop that'll occur in a couple weeks, you're asking for it to be discussed at that workshop?
I think we should have it on the agenda to discuss then again, yes. Yeah.
Mr. Kellums?
Okay, next I have a a PO that I'd like to explain. This is for Sycamore water main work. This is a purchase order for $1,094,856. Now, this is for new water main and services all along the Sycamore Road project, the whole length from Plainfield Road to Kenwood Road. Now, Waterworks is paying for this. We just included it in our contract with our contractor. Waterworks has already given us $930,627.60, which we have deposited in our bank. So, the way we usually do these projects is they include it in our bid so that we have one contractor doing the whole project. They front us 85% of the money. As the water main is put in, we pay for it all the way up to the end. They reimburse us for the remaining part after the 85% is gone when the project is completed.
Tracy, what are the last three digits on that?
$1,094,856.
856, okay. I'll make a motion to approve purchase order for $1,094,856 for Sycamore water main work in our road project.
And I will second that.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Kellums?
Okay, next is car show. We've got a date for the car show on August 1st. Super 60s is the club. I know you guys have been up there before and seen it. They do a great job for us. We will be going ahead and advertising with Show and Shine also. J.D. Hughes, we're looking to get as the DJ again. So just wanted to get that date out there for you. That will be August 1st at Shore Park.
Okay.
And then besides that, going back to maintenance, we had put a couple trucks on gov deals, a couple of our old ones that we thought we might get $400 or $500 for, because they were really worn out. One was a 1979 Ford tractor. I actually hate to see it leave because it's the only piece of equipment that was here when I got here. So, the bid on that was actually surprisingly $3,925. So we're very happy to see that. And then the other one was our 2000 stake body, and the bid on that was $4,150. So those both brought in more than we ever expected they would. The only other thing I have is, as far as parks go, we're still accepting applications for a park advisory committee. We got another application today. I know Mr. Warrick's been getting some of those in, and we'll be sharing those with you when the time comes. Other than that, we've been working on the website. I know Jason Petty has been working with Beth a lot. They've done a lot with the fields as far as putting the rules up there, maps of all the fields, price lists for all the fields. I believe you can also reserve the fields right online now, can't you, Beth? Okay. So that's all online now and working out well, and the baseball diamonds are filling up. There's been quite a demand for them, so if anybody wants one, they need to move quickly.
Question about that. Is Moeller leasing the baseball diamonds up north again this year? Is that an ongoing thing?
Yes.
Okay. And do you happen to know, are they paying rent for that, and what are they
They are.
paying? They are. Okay. We had a lease with them originally that I think expired of its own accord. Are we just following those terms still, or do we have an actual renewed lease?
I would have to defer to Mr. Petty on that. I have not read that.
Okay. If we don't have a lease in place and they're continuing to use it, I would think we should have one in place just so we know who's liable for what if something goes wrong. So maybe Mr. Desai could look into that as well.
Be happy to.
Yeah, thank you.
Tracy, you done?
I just one other quick thing on the, as you remember, we had the Fields Corridor open house that was attended very well by the residents. got a lot of input from there. Wanted you to know that we heard quite a few talk about sidewalks. We did have a meeting with Sharonville and Hamilton County and all three consultants considering a safe route to schools grant that would be good for sidewalks. Sharonville is the one that will be heading that up. They have submitted something on behalf of us and them, but we'll be awaiting to see what comes of that. But in the meantime, we're going to try to, we're changing the plans a little to grade the roundabout, the intersection, everything out, that it can have sidewalks put in at a later date. So just wanted to pass that along.
That brings to mind another question. Sorry to keep peppering you with questions here, Tracy, but Ms. Gannis, in a prior meeting, had asked about the possibility of a sidewalk on at least a limited portion of Galbraith Road on the Jewish hospital side of it because it's difficult to walk along through there. There's just grass there. Is that something we've ever looked at? Is that something extraordinarily costly or that we'd run into great expense for, or is that something we could do?
Yeah, I'd have to look at it. I don't know if there's, the main thing would be is there enough right-of-way? You know, they've widened that road a little. If we had to purchase right-of-way, it would obviously be expensive. I believe there's a crosswalk at the intersection, though there's sidewalk on the other side, because I've used that, but we can definitely look into it.
Yeah, if you could take a look at it at least, and let's see whether it's something that is potentially feasible, not at great cost, then,
I
yeah,
did
thanks.
get a copy of that, yes. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, the law director report.
Mr.
Sorry?
Chair, thank you. Just two items. First, want to report I received an email from the manager over at Deer Park indicating that on January 13th, 2020, Deer Park passed a resolution approving the agreement with Sycamore Township to enter into a joint economic development district for the property that I believe CIG is developing. So we're awaiting a fully executed contract from them, and I expect at the next workshop meeting I'll be presenting the trustees with a signature page to countersign. So that's good news, and I know Mr. Warrick has been working hard with the manager over there to get the JED board meeting set up. So you should be hearing news about that as we move towards the end of winter. The second thing I just wanted to mention, even though I don't know much about it, but I thought it would be interesting for folks to know, because we all undergo, whether you're a nurse or you're a lawyer or you're a government official, ongoing training, and you try to avail yourself of opportunities. And I believe there's an event coming up with the Township Association here in the near future that I thought one of the trustees might want to mention. I don't know if you were planning on mentioning that in your comments, but something the residents might want to know about.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, so Mr. Whedon's going to talk about that, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Administrative report, and our administrator, Mr. Warwick.
Yeah, I'd like to mention the Park Advisory Committee. We did put a structure on the website and on Facebook as people apply, and I would point out that that structure has not been approved by the board, so at some point when we have a roster of folks and we bring it back, we are going to ask the board to approve that structure or direct us to amend it. We currently have 5 applicants, and I believe the structure that we borrowed from another local government was calling for 6 plus Jason Petty to chair it. So we've got we have 5 applicants right now. It'd be nice to get some more, and it'd be nice to get them a little more spread out in other areas of the township. So we'll go ahead and ask for some more again, and then I guess when we get to the next meeting, the workshop, we ought to explain to the board where we're at, and maybe ask for advice or approval on the structure. Next item I have is a little update on the computer upgrade. We had come to the board and asked for approval to spend up to $75,000. We were still negotiating at the time, but we had some urgency because the Windows 7 was no longer supported. Happy to report that even right after that meeting and our negotiations that week, we had a quote from a couple different places, and we had settled on a price of $66,300. The committee took a little closer look and asked a lot of good questions. Chief Penny, Tracy, and Skylar had a lot of good ideas. Skylar kind of walked point on it, and we were able to get everything that we needed for $57,878. So we came in well under the $75,000. We appreciate the board giving us that much room to roam, but that one turned out pretty good.
Thank you.
All of the hardware is in, right, Skylar?
It is downstairs, ready to be set up.
Okay, so hopefully it'll be installed here over the next 2 or 3 weeks. The license cost is in the service agreement, which has not been finalized yet. We just purchased the hardware. Yeah. That'll be coming before the board any time now. We're still negotiating that.
Let me suggest, if I could, Mr. McGrew does have some expertise in that area. If he's interested in taking a look at that, by all means, make a request, Doug. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thought, too.
Okay. Next, a timekeeping system was mentioned by our law director. He had concerns with the way we were doing it in the modern age. And so we talked to Paycor, which is our payroll company, and said, can you recommend something like that? Well, the person who came and met with us knew exactly what the problem was. I hate to admit that our law director might have been right about something, but he was. He said, I know exactly what the issue is, and here's what everybody is doing, kind of a thing. So I put in your packet a little explanation of what this will be. It's not like the old days of using a time clock. People can actually clock in on their phone or on a computer. Their supervisor and HR department can watch it and help with any discrepancies and override them. But it will give us a much better track of a much better record, I guess, would be the thing to say, so that if we ever have a problem in the future. It's $1,200 to set it up, and there's a monthly charge of $70-some, I believe. This would just pertain to maintenance and administration. The fire department has a separate timekeeping system that would not be included in this. So it can be taken care of within budget, and if you want us to move forward with it, we can do that. It also will streamline some of the work that Beth has to do in gathering the time each week. And it can do extra things that we don't think we need to probably engage at this time.
We don't need a motion on that.
We're under the $2,500.
Let me ask, if I could, to both Beth and Tracy, because you guys will be dealing with this a lot. Do you have any qualms about this particular system and using it, or does it seem like it's going to be useful for what you do, based on the recommendation we got from Mr. Desai that we need to do something?
I think the hardest part will getting people used to doing it and remember to do it. It doesn't sound very complicated. They can do it on an app on their phone.
But during that time, if we notice somebody didn't clock in and we know they're working, we can go back and fix it.
They'll still get paid, yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Ed on that?
You're still up?
Yeah. I have in your packet a draft of a traffic impact and economic impact study. This is for the portion of Kenwood Road that has the median. This particular request for proposal was done free of charge by citizen Jack Flume, and the purpose of it is we could use this document to go out and get requests for proposals. The next step, though, with this would be to send it down to the county engineers and get their input, which also doesn't cost anything other than the amount of money we send to the county anyway. But if you want us to proceed, that would be the next thing we should do with this.
And I highly recommend that we do that.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, there should be a motion to continue with this by sending it to the county engineer to Mr. Hubbard's office.
Okay, I so move.
Second.
So just to be clear then, though, there's no cost to us to do this from this point, to get this put together and even to issue the RFP. It would only be if we accept it at that point, there's a cost?
Yeah, after we have the county's input, we'll bring it back to you, and then, yes, the only cost for requesting proposals will be whatever vehicle or vehicles we happen to use to put out the request, but I don't think it would cost anything to do that.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Okay, just a quick update on the township openness initiatives, because several things were talked about and several things have been done. As you can see, we do have video cameras now. And some time ago, the trustees moved even the workshops into this meeting room when they were holding some of them in the conference room before. We're trying to make the website titling and the attachments of when we put agendas and minutes and all of those things arranged a little more logically so they're easier to access. And we're trying to get the copies of the agenda items out to the public before the meetings. They are in draft form, so sometimes you're going to notice that they may get revised even as we get to the meetings, because we're giving a lot of all this information to the trustees up front, and when they many times are going to come back and say, hey, what is this? And maybe we have to change the agenda a little bit, but we're trying to get that in your hands the first draft as soon as we have it. We're putting the draft resolutions on the screen. All of the data that is provided for the trustees and the fiscal officer, we also have 2 desk copies out there that have everything that they're looking at. We really don't want to go to the expense of trying to guess how many people are coming to the meeting and make that many copies, but if anybody would want to see everything they have, their shared copies will be available. We did some additional furniture. Obviously, we've rearranged the room a little bit. We want to pay attention to making all of this very accessible. We want to take a look at our newsletter and maybe get it available more on an electronic basis. We now do a mailing that costs, I can't remember, $1,800 or something every quarter when we do it. I don't know if that can be converted to full electronic over time, but we're going to try to improve the electronic version of it. I think that's it. We have a suggestion box out there if anybody wanted to add to those items.
Mr. Warrick, I just want to thank you for the minutes, because that's something I had complained about for 2 years, and on occasion would get the minutes at 4 o'clock on the day of the meeting that began at 7 o'clock, and I thank you for your work in that area. And while we're talking about openness, Mr. Warrick, social media is at times disturbing, but there was a posting in reference to the township, and the quote is, they are going through offices, throwing away really nice furniture just so they can have brand new. And I realize this is a First Amendment right, and so anybody can do what they want to do, right, whatever they want to do. But let's clarify that, because I happened to be here the day that the furniture was being taken out of your office. Would you explain that and what the cost of your brand new furniture is in your office?
Well, it's not brand new, but the furniture that was in there was in disrepair. Some of it could be salvaged that we took downstairs. And I went out to the liquidator place, the same place that the fire department has bought some office furniture before. And I bought a used set of furniture to replace that.
And what did you pay for that? You have a ballpark figure?
All the stuff together was, I think, $1,400 and a couple $100 for setup.
While we're on openness, as our administrator, are we going to raise taxes in Sycamore Township in the near future?
Well, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know why we would do that.
Let me ask our assistant administrator, Tracy Kellums, are we going to raise taxes in the near future?
I certainly hope not.
Would you repeat that?
I certainly hope not.
Okay. That's all.
I have no plans for that either, I'll point out.
Okay, I will say I have a concern about that because it was posted on social media, not once, not twice, but several times. And let me add to that. If it's a Jane Doe who's posting this, it really means nothing. And it's a First Amendment right, as we all know, Mr. Weidman. You can say whatever you want to say. Absolutely. But when your wife is Karen and she's posting it on social media, and you are the assistant administrator, I'm just going to throw this out there. I would think she has credibility because she has inside information. So I'm just throwing that out there, and I know that that's First Amendment right, but I'm glad you clarified that by saying that we're not going to raise taxes. So I thank you for that answer.
We were,
Mr. Warrick?
yeah, to return to the agenda, the contract that the trustees asked us to negotiate and finalize with the ESP, which is the folks that are doing the videoing, that contract has been executed at the prices that the board saw.
If I could make a comment also, first of all, welcome to ESP Media. And there are people who are here operating the cameras live and doing a live production here, which isn't being live streamed yet, but will be soon. I'd like to commend my fellow trustees for making that happen. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Weidman, you set that in motion before the end of the year, before I took office, to start getting video in here, and I appreciate that. I'd like to thank the staff also. I know a lot of these changes in the way we've been doing some of the things here in the township to make sure we're communicating even better than before has been a burden for some of you, just in changing habits more than anything else, not out of not wanting to do that, and I don't mean to suggest that, but I appreciate all the extra work that has gone into that to get some of these new processes in place, so thank you all. And answering all my questions about that, I know it's probably annoying sometimes, but as I said, I'm learning. I'm a newbie here, so thank you.
I have one last item, Mr. Chairman. It's a resolution that raises the funds to the CIC, which is the clearinghouse for the folks who work in a JED but live in the township, and they're able to get the earnings tax refunded to them. We put a little bit of money in right at the beginning of the year, and the practice was to every quarter put $20,000 in or so. Well, we have a track record now. We know how much we're going to spend in there. So we're just asking to put $70,000 in with this resolution, and that will have the money in the CIC for the rest of the year.
I'll make a motion to transfer $70,000 to our, oh, you do, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, yes. Mr. Warrick, are you finished?
Yep, yes.
Mr. Chair, I have.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I have a resolution authorizing and directing a transfer of funds to the Sycamore Township CIC, Inc., the designated Community Improvement Corporation of Sycamore Township, for funding grants and operating costs and dispensing with the second reading.
Motion.
Second.
Any
If I-
discussion?
Yeah, actually, I'd just like to note something here for the public's knowledge here. I'd like to commend Mr. Desai, first of all, for working on this and other resolutions. If anyone out there actually reads these things, besides the two lawyers up here and the other trustees as well, I've made it my mission, and Mr. Desai has also made it his mission to make some of these a little more explanatory than they might have been in the past as to the basis for some of these and what they're doing. So you'll see with it here on the screen, there's a title, there are a bunch of things that we lawyers call recitals there, where it has all those whereas clauses saying why we're doing things. So that 10 years from now, if someone looks back to see what happened in a resolution, it's got some context, which is useful because sometimes you lose that and you've got to go dig it out of minutes and other things. That's not to criticize what's gone on before, it's just a way to be more informative about this here. So people also like to joke that lawyers used to get paid by the word, so maybe adding more words is something we can't help but do. But Mr. Desai is not being paid that way, I assure you. But we hope this is something the public appreciates and the trustees appreciate too as we look at these and consider them so we know what we're doing and putting them in place.
That figure of 70,000, in the past, what we've done is every few months, we keep coming back, so this way it'll hold it for a while.
Yeah, this should get us through the year, I think.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
That's all I have.
That's it? Okay, we'll go to zoning department and Mr. Miller.
Sure. Just to let everyone know that Land Use Steering Committee is now meeting bi-weekly, Monday mornings at 8:30. We actually just had a meeting, it was January 28th, and so we'll have our next one next week. Tracy, we actually moved that, it's not on Monday. It's Wednesday, yeah. So we do flex just a little bit based on timing and availability of our members. But generally, they're gonna be on Monday mornings bi-weekly, held in this meeting room and open for to the public to sit in and view. Recently, at our last meeting, we talked about the Montgomery Road corridor and how we see that changing over the next 10 to 20 years. The website needs to be updated to reflect some of these changes in the meeting format, and that'll be done shortly. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Fiscal officer, report. Mr. Porter.
No communications tonight.
Okay, trustees' comments. Mr. Weedman.
I just wanted to mention, so we moved this meeting to Tuesday from Thursday because we have our Ohio Township Association Conference in Columbus, which goes from Wednesday through, it actually closes on Saturday, but I'm not sure how many people actually stay till Saturday. But so we'll all be attending in one or 2 days up there. And we also, our Hamilton County Township Association is meeting with having our annual meeting with the county engineer, which is obligated by state law. We will be having that on February 27th, and that will be in Green Township.
Mr. James?
Yes, I had a few comments here. If I can find my notes under all the paper in front of me here. Let's see. I wanted to make a few comments about the issue of the festival, because that's something that's been coming up on social media. I know Mr. McGrew in particular has been quite concerned about that in some postings. So wanted to bring, and Kim as well, yes, thank you, and others as well. It's something I wanted to address, and I had something to put up on the screen about that, if we could get that up, Skylar. Just some numbers that I've looked into. Stay there for a second. First of all, in our meeting last month, the trustees made no decision as to the festival, which effectively means it's not going to happen in the prior form because of that. We didn't move to proceed with it. I have concerns about the expense of the festival historically, and moving ahead with it with the sort of band names we've been hiring, some of which actually have some of the original members in them still and often don't, but we're paying for the name at least. I've got no problem with doing some sort of festival in the park. On the other hand, I think we should do some things for the community, not necessarily for the broad metropolitan area or the multi-state region, as we've been advertising some of it in the past. And so if we could move to the next slide, you'll see something, a form of something some of you have seen me put together before. I went back and got numbers from the township going back as far as Debbie Campbell had spreadsheets going back accounting for the festival. That was back to 2004. And put them together in a summary by year, and then actually came up with this graph which shows you the revenues there in green that we got in each year. That includes donations from generous donors we had. It includes revenues from booth fees, ride sales, things like that. The expenses shown on the gray bars there with the totals on top, that's what the township actually put out total before recapturing some money from the revenues. And then the red bars there at the bottom, that's what the net cost was in the end after you subtract the revenues from the expenses we had. Some of those expenses got significant over time. You see in 2017, the peak was almost $190,000 in outlay, and we recovered $33,000, so we were out a net $156,000 or so in cost that year. I've used the term loss before. I'm using cost here because I understand some are sensitive to that, and this is a community event, and there are costs and things we do, certainly. But the buildup of this over time was of great concern to me, and it's part of why I chose to run for office. I recognize others have different views about spending that money, and I respect that. But this is something that had gotten my attention at the time. I know other communities around us, Montgomery is one, Blue Ash is another, spend a good deal of money on their public events that they have each year. They spend more than we do. They have different purposes in some of what they do, certainly. But I asked some of the other communities around us what they spend. Madeira is one I was curious about. Last year, my family and many friends from Sycamore Township went to Madeira's fireworks celebration that they have. Let's go to the next slide. I asked them for an accounting of that and was a little surprised comparing it to the cost of ours. Montgomery spends under $15,000 a year on their big fireworks celebration. They have bands, albeit local ones, not Jefferson Starship or people using that name. They have food trucks there. But they have fireworks. They had a huge crowd. I think they had more people there than we had at the Saturday night of our festival this year. Most of them from the Madeira community and surrounding communities as well. So in 2019, they spent $14,772 and change. That's a heck of a lot less than we're spending on what is a bigger event in terms of bands, certainly, but not necessarily attendance. So that got my attention. How do they do that? So then I thought, Deer Park has their summer festival also. I wonder what they spend on that. They have a 2-day festival like we've been having. Again, they don't have the big name bands, but it's a pretty nice event. Caters primarily to the Deer Park community, but others around there as well. So let's move ahead to the numbers there. I asked for their accounting and got that pretty recently from them. The boxes in green there, that's the receipts coming in. The boxes in red, I know it's hard to read with the little print here, that's what they spent. I've got a summary on the next screen, as you can see here, though. Let's move ahead. Total gross expenses, they outlaid just under $30,000. They broke that down in a few ways on that chart I showed you a minute ago. They spent a little over $10,000 for booths and rides and so forth, and then just under another $20,000 for entertainment, again, including fireworks, by the way, local bands and so on. They brought in $43,000 and change there from sponsors and vendors and other revenues. So let's move to the next slide here. As they put it, they made a $14,000 profit on their festival. People keep telling me nobody in government ever makes a profit on a festival. Now, this is from government accounting numbers, so I have no doubt there's a little fudging in there. But nonetheless, they came out ahead cost-wise on that. And that's impressive. And I praise our neighbors in Deer Park for making that happen and bringing this in with the budget they did. Beer sales were the big factor in that. They are a city. We are not. There are different legal rules that apply as to being able to even sell beer. There are other ways that can happen with the township by contracting that out and giving revenues back on the other hand. But the beer sales basically account for the profit, as they put it there. If you net that out, though, the cost of the beer and the revenues from it, they still broke even. They actually made about $200 still, even after that. Compare that to our festival. We had receipts of a little over $33,000 in 2019. Our gross outlay was $123,000 and change, and our net cost, after offsetting those two, was a little over $90,000. Our gross cost was 4 times theirs. Now, yes, we had big bands, certainly, but that's a pretty substantial difference. I'd like to see us do things in the park. I'd like us to aim local for our residents. they had shuttle services, as a matter of fact, or Madeira did anyway. I think Deer Park did. Population in Madeira is about 9,000 people, so about half hours, but they cater to the surrounding area as well. So, again, slightly different communities, different structures of the communities. We are spread across 3 islands here in our region of Greater Cincinnati. They are a compact community, but they cater to the broader community as well. Again, a lot of people from Sycamore were there, a lot of people from Indian Hill, a lot of people from Deer Park, actually, from Montgomery, from Mason and other places. I saw people from all those places there. So they're able to do it on a substantially smaller budget. That's something I think we can do too, and it's something we need a new Parks Advisory Committee to help with. So if you could move ahead there again, how you can help. And anybody out there watching on video, I hope there's someone out there watching on video soon when this goes out there and sees this who wasn't here. That's part of why we're doing this. Here's how you can help, though. You can help bring new and better events to our parks by getting involved in the Parks Advisory Committee. You can send your resume or a biography to Ray Warrick. You can call the Township building. You can mail us a letter. You can drop by. You can put something in the suggestion box. But hey, help out, please. I know there are people who are unhappy that there's not going to be a big festival this year like before, but help us make something great happen nonetheless. You've got great ideas. Let's do that. Let's pull together as a community and do something great for our community where we're not spending $10,000 on radio advertising to bring people in from outside and thousands of dollars on other things. Let's do something for our residents. So here's how you can do this. If you can go to the next slide also. If you've got ideas and suggestions, I just want to remind people, send that in. If you've got a great idea for an event, for a class you want to have for our community even, we can do programming in the parks for things like that when the weather's nice or at a pavilion. I understand the daughter of a township employee who retired last year used to have couponing classes. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but if it is, that's an option. There are other things that we all have talents for that we can help our community be a better place in our parks. So please, get involved. Give us your ideas. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. James. I'll make my comments. If I have anything to do with the festival or an event, when it resumes, whatever we call it, whether it's a one-day event or a 5-day event, any kind of a similar event, I want to make this very clear, very clear. The controversial beer booth will be run by a non-political business or group. The township will share in the revenue and have nothing to do with running the booth. Again, it will be a non-political group running the beer booth in the future. And I just want to note a lot of concern about the Dillonvale Shopping Center, Deer Park. You may have seen this, the branch library update. Their facility master plan is to relocate and expand within the Dillonvale Shopping Center. Their board of trustees will review a new lease for approximately 25,000 square feet. They want the old TJ Maxx space, and they're looking at a 10-year lease, so that probably will put to bed the rumors of it going Section 8 housing. And announcement changes, the date change, Board of Zoning Appeals meeting Tuesday, February the 18th, at 6:30 at the Township Administration Building. And we're going to take a break right now. We're going to motion to move to an executive session.
Make a motion, do we move to an executive session for the purposes of litigation as permitted by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G.
Second.
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Who do you want in the meeting?
That's the prayers. I think we probably just
Misty,
need you,
this side?
you,
Yeah.
this group.
Okay.